Hi, I'm Kermit Carter with Flowers by the Sea. We're going to talk a little bit about growing salvias from seed. And I really want to emphasize a little bit. Horticulture students take year-long classes on seed raising, and there are books and volumes that describe it. So we're not going to go into all the subtleties or every different way that you can accomplish something. We're just going to sow one type of seed, and I'll show you how we do it. And if you copy this technique, you can be successful too. So if you need more information, I want to refer to you to Peter Thompson's book, Creative Propagation. We use this as a reference constantly. We actually have several copies of it spread about. The information in here is really good and succinct. If you follow these techniques, you'll be successful. So we're going to start out with small containers. I've used for years these 4-inch short pots. They're 4x4 and short for their size. This is what we sow all our seeds in. Whether we have 2 or 100, this pot is large enough to accommodate them. And something about this size can be used. A lot of people will use smaller pots, something in the 2.5-inch range. And if you're only doing a few and growing on a windowsill, then that might even be better for you. Now, we use 3 different layers in our of soil material, of potting material in these pots. The first layer, and that's what the plants are going to grow in essentially, is the normal potting soil that we use for everything. It's ProMix HP, and ProMix HP, it's a peat perlite mix that drains very well. Into that I mix 2 different bacteria cultures. One that's called Root Shield, and we buy it in big boxes like this. If you store it in a freezer, it lasts for a long time. Use very, very little of it. And a soil for a pot this size should use maybe 1/8 of a teaspoon, so a very small amount, but Root Shield is available commercially. And I also use another general purpose inoculant, and this is stuff called Great White. And it's got a list a mile long of different bacteria cultures that help combat the diseases of seedlings and also strengthen the roots and create a relationship with them that allows for good transfer of nutrients. So this is what the Root Shield looks like. And again, we just use essentially a pinch in the amount of soil that would go in there. Great White is white, but very much the same. So I have a technique for measuring the amount of soil that goes in the pot, but in essence, we're trying to fill it up about halfway with the potting soil. So you can see what that looks like. And I firmed it very gently, more or less just to get a level surface. All right, that's about halfway full of soil. On top of that, I want to, and this is what the seeds will sit on top of, I want to use a very well draining mixture. And I'm going to dump some out and show you what we use. This is a gravelly, lava-based sand mixed with coarse horticultural perlite. You can use smaller perlite, you can use gravel, you can use washed aquarium sand. The whole idea is that this is something that drains rather freely, but still allows for a certain amount of moisture to be held. And so once again, I've got my technique for the quantities that go in these pots. But in essence, I'm going to make about a 1-inch layer of this material. And that's, again, what the seed is going to sit on. So we have the potting soil underneath. We have this rapid draining, gravelly, sandy material on top. And that's the base for our seed. On top of the seed, once we sow it, I'm going to use something that in essence is horticultural grit. In Great Britain, you can get horticultural grit everywhere. In the United States, people will look at you askance if you ask for it. Again, crushed granite or igneous rock works well. You want something with sharp edges, not round edges. 1/8 of an inch is about as big as you want it to be. Some of this is a little larger, but this is what I can get locally and it works for us. So this is the material we're going to cover the seed with. Let me clean my space here rather quickly. I like to work reasonably cleanly when I'm dealing with seeds. Seeds are valuable and they're also special and almost magic. And we certainly don't want to get them lost in the debris. So I've got my pot ready here. Salvia campanulata is one of the Chinese herbaceous perennial salvias that is quite hardy down to zone 5 or minus 20 degrees. They're summer flowering. They get 3.5 or 4 feet tall, covered with beautiful yellow flowers. It's really an elegant salvia, and we work very hard to raise our own seed so as to be able to have plants to sell every year. So I'm going to take this seed and put it in the palm of my hand. I'm going to take 20 or 25 seeds because I found from experience that's a good number of these to fit in the pot. I could use more, but that's about enough. And I'm simply going to distribute them as evenly as I can, but still rapidly across the surface of the media. Now, if you really want to be careful, you can put one by one seed down and get them just perfect. But when you're doing tens or dozens or hundreds of these, you learn to scatter pretty quickly. Now, I mentioned covering material. Salvias and all salvias require light to the seed in order to germinate. So you'd think, well, I don't want to cover them at all, but if I don't cover them at all, controlling the environment around that seed in terms of moisture and light becomes very difficult. So we typically cover them with a very coarse material and thinly so that the light can come through a little bit and trigger germination. So I'm going to take this material and I'm going to shake it on this pot, and then I'll show you what it looks like. So there we go. Can't really turn that at much of an angle. It's just a cover about the same amount as the diameter of a seed. For some of the really small salvia seeds, we would cover them very, very lightly. For some of the larger seeds, we'd cover them a little more heavily than this. And all that we're lacking now is a tag. So if I don't label what this is, there'll be confusion later on as to what it is. And so I'm going to write Salvia campanulata, and I'm making a little notation as to where the seed was from because we've got lots of different clones here. And I'm going to write today's date on the back. Put that tag in the pot, and I'm done. We'll water that in and it's ready to go. So here's a real simple way for you to grow easy salvia seeds. Obviously, it can get far more complex than this, but our intent here is to show you a simple technique that you can use and be successful growing your salvias from seed.